Hi, my name's Beth Bonfilio. I'm the clinical nutritionist and also the therapist at a Little Fuss Pot, and I'm going to share with you how it's possible to absorb the most amount of nutrients via predominantly calcium from your food, even if you've decided to become dairy free. Now, it's no secret, obviously students of mine will know that I'm not a big fan of children being raised on an abundance of dairy. And so one of the major questions I get asked is, how can we guarantee that our child has enough calcium in their diet? And this is definitely a conundrum because our government does require us, or I guess recommend us, to have such an abundance of dairy. However, I'm finding, certainly in my field of things, and also when I come in contact with other professionals, that tides are starting to change on the thought process around dairy. A lot of nutritionists and also infantile sleep therapists are also catching on to the fact that dairy can actually cause quite a few problems in a child. So you'll probably know that I'm not a great fan. So one of the questions I get asked is, how can we maintain enough calcium storage? Now, one thing I want to make really clear is that you can have a litre of calcium a day and still not absorb any of it. So I guess the best way for explaining it is if you were to turn up to a house and choose to build the house, and all you've really organised is to turn up with a load of bricks. If there's no one to unload those bricks, if there's no bricklayer to be able to put the mortar in the bricks, and there's no one to actually organise how the house is put together, then you're not going to get a house. And the same is with calcium. Unfortunately, because our bones are so dense and our teeth are so solid, getting calcium to them is not really an easy thing to do. Our bones absorb calcium at a rate of about 10% because our food is lacking a lot of key nutrients. One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is a blog that I wrote only last week. Now, I'm making you aware of it, the people in my therapy group, because I like to address the calcium issue, because this is a thing that gets brought up by a lot of you. So I've recently written a blog, and I'll put the link below in the comments, and I want you to be first to read this and give your thoughts on it if you can. But I've done a little bit of research into it, and one of the holistic dentists in Sydney, his name is Stephen Lynn. I listened to a podcast from him lately, and he has a very similar thought process with regards to calcium, and how we rely too much on getting that from dairy sources. We are very capable of absorbing calcium from other sources, sesame seeds, nuts, legumes, green leafy vegetables, bones from salmon. And there's so many sources of calcium, some even richer than dairy, but for some reason we just put such a huge reliance on the dairy industry to supply everything we need for our bones. Dairy is not bioavailable, it's not easy to absorb, so we need a couple of key vitamins in a child's diet to make sure that they're getting everything that they need. So you'll see in the blog that I've written all of this in detail. So there's three main fat-soluble vitamins that you need to absorb calcium. Now, you probably all know what the number one suggestion is, and that is vitamin D, or vitamin D2. And this is particularly quite important if you're in the UK, because at this time of the year, the sun is really not penetrating the skin with too much vitamin D, so you're not really synthesizing that in the system. What I used to do is I used to buy a little bottle of it, because I had my son in Spain, and I had him in November, obviously when there was no sunshine about, and so I used to drop 1 or 2 drops of vitamin D into his orange juice when he was about 6 months old, and that was enough just to boost the absorption of calcium. But what you'll also find is that we also need vitamin A. You get that from lots of orange type vegetables, and we also need K2. Now, K2 is a fat-soluble vitamin that we don't get a lot of. This is one of the hardest ones. So we certainly get a lot of calcium from dairy products, sardines, canned salmon, beans and lentils, almonds, leafy greens and figs. We get a lot of vitamins from eggs, carrots, sweet potatoes, winter squash, cantaloupe, apricots, your orange type vegetables. Get a lot of vitamin D from the sun. We can also get it from food sources like salmon, herring and sardines, cod liver oil, so your really oily type fishes, canned tuna, oysters, shrimps and prawns, egg yolks and mushrooms. But K2 is the hard one, because what you need is to have it from an animal source where the animal has spent lots of time in the sunshine eating grass. And as you can imagine, with the population growing at the rate it is, there's not a whole lot of sunshine and grass available for keeping up with the food supply chain. So you'll often find that even dairy farmers will have their cows on a rotation process where they're milking every 4 hours. They're not outside enjoying grass or sunshine or being able to absorb vitamin D themselves. Therefore, they're not able to synthesize vitamin K2. So where it used to be available in our meats and our dairy sources, it no longer is. So this is one of the key, what Dr. Stephen Lin believes is one of the key reasons why we're so prone to osteoporosis and not being able to absorb enough calcium into our bones, is because we treat our meat so differently and also our dairy source so differently. So one of the things that I wanted to sort of make very clear is if you're going to reintroduce dairy into your child's diet, or if you're going to continue to have dairy, really consider your source. Make sure it's a grass-fed dairy supply. And you might also want to consider adding a few other extra elements to your cooking just to make sure that you're getting enough of this vitamin K2. Now, because it's a fat-soluble vitamin, you don't need a lot of it. Water-soluble vitamins like vitamin B and vitamin C, you need it every day, but not so much with K2. Liver. Organ meats like liver and kidney, kefir and sauerkraut also have K2, and brie and Gouda cheese. Now, it's the way that they're fermented is the reason why it has K2. Now, what I thought might be a really good suggestion is just adding things like blended up liver or kidney just to a spaghetti bolognese, because it's really easy to disguise and therefore giving you the richest source of vitamin K2. So there you have it. With those 3 vitamins, vitamin K2, D and A, you're able to absorb calcium from just about any source, and you don't need to supply such an abundance of dairy. In fact, it would be probably, you'll probably get more from other sources than what you will from dairy if you just make sure that you have a good balance of those 3 key ingredients. Vitamins. So therefore, I guess when you're going to build that house, you've got your builder, you've got your bricklayer, and you've also got someone who can put the whole process together rather than just turning up and expecting a house to be built out of a ton of bricks. Anyway, I hope this has been useful. I plan on doing another session soon on iron. Anyway, very good to see some of you here, some really old clients, Nicola. Yeah, anyway, I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.